And these are the most disturbing crimes that happen in the streaming community. And as the list goes on, the cases just keep getting worse. In October of 2022, Ramzi Khalid Ismail began his YouTube career under the moniker Johnny Somali by posting vlogs that mainly showcase his night outs at parties and clubs. After his first video titled Halloween 2022, he would then move to Bangkok, Thailand, and begin uploading content from there, hoping to make a name for himself on the platform. However, most of his videos only managed to get a few hundred views at the time, with just one club video going viral. Johnny figured that he needed to garner more traction to grow his viewership, and this pushed him toward IRL streaming, a huge trend at the time, driven by a wave of creators who were finding major success with it. But instead of presenting himself to be likable and deserving of respect, Johnny had other things in mind. His goal was to form clips, and essentially attract lots of viewers by disturbing the peace in countries known for their friendly and welcoming nature. And in May of 2023, Johnny arrived in the country for his first IRL stream, and not even a full day later, he would draw attention to himself on a subway train where he began harassing a Japanese passenger.
You know Hiroshima, Nagasaki, you know, why you do this?
Confused about what was going on, the man simply sat there trying to understand why this American was suddenly shouting the names of Japanese cities. And while this was happening, another passenger stepped in. It was another fellow American who happened to be on the same train. And after watching Johnny harassing a local, he decided to confront him.
Okay, what do you mean?
Where are you from?
I'm from America.
You're from America?
Yes.
So am I.
You know what we do to you?
What do you do?
We will do again.
Do what?
Hiroshima, Nagasaki.
And once the American revealed he was also Korean, Johnny reacted by repeating the same nonsense towards him, then shifted to directly insulting him by bringing up the Korean War.
Korean.
Then sit down, brother. Korean War, you know what happened to you?
Don't touch me. Obnoxious, brother.
Don't touch me,
Leave this
brother.
guy alone.
Fortunately, the situation didn't go any further than the brief confrontation. But among the handful of people watching the stream, someone clipped the entire interaction and posted it to Twitter. And this very clip quickly racked up millions of views. And rather than getting positive reactions, Johnny was hit with overwhelming backlash and infuriated just about everyone who watched it. And when Japanese citizens saw the post as well, they were enraged to the point where one man took it upon himself to confront Johnny in person.
No. We did. Hey, we chill.
The man eventually got off his bike and started walking towards him, which caused a visibly frightened Johnny to back away. After putting some distance between them, the man then approached again on his bike, although this time he wasn't nearly as hostile as Johnny had assumed, and simply wanted to talk about what had happened.
Somebody give me money, and they said, say it.
No.
So I said it on the train.
Yeah.
Somebody give me money.
Somebody?
You know, donation.
So cool.
Somebody on YouTube and Twitch.
YouTube comment?
Yeah, YouTube comment, give me money.
When he asked Johnny why he did what he did, Johnny claimed he was told to do it by a donator, which was a blatant lie, and nothing more than an attempt to escape the confrontation. And shortly after, the police also showed up and questioned him. And while Johnny didn't face any legal consequences, the next time he returned to streaming, he promised he would clean up his act moving forward. But while he was still talking, a random person then suddenly attacked him.
I hope nobody in the chat was saying weird. If I go back and whoa.
As long as Johnny remained in Japan and streamed, he was a prime target for confrontation. And only a few days later, a group of young men led by Japanese YouTuber Rengoku and Guts vowed to find Johnny and scare him out of the country. And it didn't take long before they located the Airbnb he was staying in. And likely in an attempt to get Johnny banned on Kick, Rengoku actually stripped completely naked in direct view of Johnny's camera. Fortunately for Johnny, an English and Japanese speaking translator stepped in and managed to de-escalate the situation, which led Johnny to issue a formal apology.
Gomenasai, Japan. Gomenasai. I'm sorry.
However, at the same time, Johnny was also starting to become obsessed with the attention he was receiving. Johnny had gone from being a small creator to becoming one of the most hated men in Japan, which of course also led to him being pretty famous. And whether it was the intense online backlash or the physical attacks he was facing, Johnny seemed to realize that staying in Japan was no longer feasible. And after the Airbnb incident, Johnny left Japan for a short period of time. But within a couple of weeks actually, he returned once again, this time with a fellow streamer named Gino, who seemed to only amplify Johnny's antics and made his second trip even more chaotic. One of the first notable moments on this trip was when Johnny and Gino decided to stop by a McDonald's at around 1 AM, and almost immediately after walking in, Johnny became rude and made a racist remark about the Japanese language.
Yo, this in Mulan language. What does it say? This is in Mulan language. What does it say?
And while ordering his food, he was purposefully being loud and verbally aggressive toward the woman taking his order to get a reaction off of her. But things would only escalate when a different employee brought them their food and politely asked them to not point the camera at him. And Johnny, of course, responded by aiming the camera straight at the employee, which caused him to walk away with the order and call the police instead.
Give me the food.
I'm getting you on camera, bro. Just give me the food.
Bro, you already paid for the food. Just give me the food.
Whoa!
Johnny and Gino then stepped outside for a moment, yelling and screaming, before charging back into the store and demanding their food. And because he was most likely tired of their constant harassment, the employee gave in and handed it over. But as soon as they began walking out, a man on a bike suddenly attacked Johnny again.
Don't get my food.
Now that Johnny was back and causing chaos, it was no surprise that local citizens and visitors alike became far more aggressive toward him. On one random night, for example, Johnny and Gino were out harassing yet another group of citizens when things took a much darker turn.
Hey, racist! Hey, whatever, I don't know what's going on.
All you have to say
Don't
is
grab nothing. Oh.
With 2 clean punches, both Johnny and Gino were knocked out, and by the time they regained consciousness and picked up the cameras, Johnny's mouth was visibly bloody from the encounter. However, even this didn't stop him from causing even more chaos all over the city. He knew Japan had strict social norms, but he also understood that most of his antics weren't serious enough to get him arrested or deported. But it was only a matter of time before he pushed it too far and found himself in handcuffs. On August 30th, 2023, Johnny and Gino arrived at an active construction site in Osaka's Chuo Ward and decided to enter without permission.
he's going into the warehouse. Nah, this is wild. I'm just a cameraman right here. I'm just a cameraman. I don't know what.
And before long, one of the workers confronted them.
Oh, he's mad.
And Johnny then started shouting Fukushima, referencing the nuclear meltdown that occurred in 2011, forcing more than 150,000 people out of their homes. And with this type of behavior, he not only went back on every apology he made earlier, but also showed that he would continue doubling down on his behavior. And after being thrown out of the facility, Johnny was able to avoid consequences for a few hours. But the police eventually tracked him down and arrested him outside of a 7-Eleven. Now Gino wasn't actually on the scene during the arrest and reacted to the news from his hotel room. He seemed convinced that he was safe from being taken into custody, and after waiting a few hours, he decided to step outside too. What he didn't realize, however, was that the police were already waiting for him, and as soon as he saw them, Gino had no choice but to speak with the officers. And a few moments later, he shut down his stream and was escorted to the station.
What do you mean they're looking for me? I'm in the hotel right now, bro. I'm literally in my hotel right now. The cops, if they want me, I'm sitting right here, bro. I have no reason to run, bro.
However, his arrest didn't actually have anything to do with the construction site trespassing. Instead, it was for an earlier incident where he blasted loud text-to-speech donations inside a restaurant.
Chinese virus. Huawei.
Now from this moment on, both Johnny and Gino were tied up with court hearings, though they were later released from custody while awaiting their trials. And while they couldn't make any videos or stream at the time, one of them would soon come back with more twisted plans in mind. In late November of 2023, Gino made a brief return to his Kick channel to explain what had been happening during his absence. And surprisingly, he claimed that he wouldn't be streaming in Japan anymore, as he didn't want to deal with even more repercussions.
It's not fun anymore, bro. It's just it's not safe either. I got knocked out and then I got put in jail for almost 2 months. What the is fun about that?
And while Gino claimed that he had avoided any legal consequences, Johnny wasn't that lucky, as he'd been charged for the disturbance at the restaurant and was facing up to 6 months in prison. And when he finally made his court appearance, he vowed to stop streaming and return to America, where he said he would resume his studies. And although he was found guilty, he would later be released in January of 2024 and given a 200,000 yen fine, which was a little under $1,300, and would also be deported and banned from entering Japan until 2029. But instead of staying under the radar, Johnny was committed to continuing his campaign, and with Japan off the table, he needed a new location that would offer him plenty of opportunities to create more disruptions. And he decided that place would be Israel. And only a few days after he arrived, he'd already made his presence known by provoking altercation with people passing by, which led to him getting jumped almost immediately.
What was the problem earlier? What was the problem earlier?
Although the punch barely faced Johnny, the man who actually threw it ended up in handcuffs. And as he was being arrested, Johnny approached him and started yelling slurs at him.
You monkey! Go to jail, you monkey!
Now the incident upset a few of the man's friends, who ran up to Johnny and attacked him too.
Yo, where you run up on me? Yo!
Johnny then made his way to the Western Wall, also known as the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, a site considered sacred for Jews to visit and pray. And a common practice there is to place small notes containing prayers within the cracks of the wall. Johnny, however, brought images of what he described as his favorite Jews.
Epstein, you'll always be one of us. We love you. You're our King Jew. You're one of us. It doesn't matter what you did. You're still Jewish. You're still one of us. Fire one is Harvey Weinstein. I love you so much. You're one of my favorite top Jews. I love you.
Unsurprisingly, his actions didn't go without consequence. Police quickly apprehended him at the scene, and while he didn't get thrown into a jail cell, he still ended up facing some very serious repercussions. Twitch and Kick permanently banned him, leaving Rumble as the only platform where he could continue streaming. And just when it seemed like it couldn't get any worse, Johnny would pull his most outrageous stunts yet. On April 8th, 2023, a large protest took place in Tel Aviv. But despite the sensitivity of the situation, Johnny would go there to start drawing attention to himself, and his antics would eventually prompt a female Israeli police officer to confront him. But while she showed no interest in making any arrests and eventually walked away, Johnny started to taunt her repeatedly.
Don't touch me! Don't touch me! I'm from America! I'll slap that ass, I'll grab it too! I'll grab you! I'll grab it by right here, nigga. I don't give a.
He continued harassing her and other officers at the scene until he was finally detained by a male officer.
I'm from America. I'm from America, USA.
Unfortunately, they didn't formally arrest him or take him to jail. He was just removed from the scene and let go. But just because he'd escaped punishment this time didn't mean that the police were done with him. The following day, an officer approached Johnny late at night when the streets were quiet and empty. And during that encounter, Johnny claimed that the officer had beaten him. A statement investigators would soon prove to be entirely false.
Police beat me. Huh? The police beat me tonight.
Now eventually, Johnny's time in Israel would come to an end. He obtained an emergency passport at the US Embassy and flew back to America, where he stayed mostly inactive online for a while. But as the money he'd saved from the streaming began to run out, and with rent approaching, he needed a new way to make income. And so he decided the best place to generate clips was South Korea. And so on September 27, 2024, Johnny Somali would arrive in the country to commit even more unspeakable acts. On his first day, Johnny would begin targeting anyone he could, pushing boundaries wherever possible, and he immediately stood out when he jumped onto the stage during a live music performance, leaving the crowd shocked and unsure how to react.
Oh, very nice. Wow. Amazing. Wow. Wow. He jumped on the stage. Down. Down? Oh, got on TV? I might have been on TV.
But he was just getting started. Shortly after the incident, he filmed himself sitting next to a comfort woman statue, which is a tribute to more than 200,000 women and girls forced into Japanese military adult work during the Second World War, and made a public statement about his behavior in Japan.
I stand with the Korean people. I love Korea, and everything that I did in Japan was for the Korean and the Chinese people.
The statement itself would come across as passive-aggressive, but what he did next was far worse. He sat beside the statue and eventually kissed it on the cheek. Treating such a monument as a prop for a passive-aggressive apology did not go over well, and even though Johnny promised to respect the Korean people during his visit, he openly belittled those who criticized him after the clip went viral.
The Koreans were getting mad about that comfort woman statue, so I'm like, we might as well make it matter. I think the main comfort woman statue is in front of the Japanese embassy, so that is where I'm going right now.
Over the next couple of days, Johnny wandered the streets recklessly, causing trouble everywhere he went, and one time he even stumbled upon a young woman standing alone on the sidewalk and decided to follow her into a store, harassing her until a man intervened.
What are you scared for? Relax, yo, why are you putting the phone up like this? Why are you scared like this? Whoa!
Now just a couple of days later after that, Johnny became heavily intoxicated inside a South Korean convenience store and spilled food and alcohol across the floor while blasting loud text-to-speech donations and verbally attacking everyone around him.
Father was right to say you should never have kids. Your father was right. Your father was right.
And when an elderly employee confronted him and politely told him to either stop or get out of the store, Johnny simply ignored the warning and even aggressively taunted her when she left.
I don't drink. Here. No drink. No. Look here. 이거. I eat the ramen. 그리고 아줌마, 이거. Okay, sure.
Now after a bit of time, Johnny would commit another atrocity. This time he sought out a different comfort woman statue to take advantage of, and after setting up his camera, he started touching and kissing it and rubbing himself with baby oil, blasting loud music and also grinding on the statue in full view of anybody nearby. And when he was confronted by bystanders, he immediately pretended he was unaware of what was happening. Throughout October, Johnny would repeat the same types of stunts that made him famous, provoking strangers, causing scenes in public, and constantly drawing attention to the police. But after he disrespected the comfort woman statue, his situation got even worse. Korean citizens began rushing to his location whenever he showed up, and even a 1 million won bounty started circulating, which led to even more people joining in. In one instance, a passerby walked up and sucker punched him while he wasn't even paying attention.
Trust me, Johnny's. Go to Johnny's stream. We're gonna have a good time. Whoa!
Great night.
Go to Johnny's stream. We're gonna have a good time.
Whoa!
But the attacks didn't stop there. A few days later, he would get jumped and chased down the street by another group of angry Korean citizens. And the next day after that, another Korean YouTuber confronted him and nearly knocked him unconscious.
어디 가? What you mean? 어디 가? 어디 가? Oh. Yo.
Being in a country full of people who wanted to physically harm him was bad enough, but it got even worse when an arrest warrant was issued for both him and his bodyguard, listing charges that included obstruction of business and violations of the Minor Crimes Act. Now meanwhile, it was also discovered that he'd created AI-generated videos of himself making out with a female Korean streamer, and in South Korea, producing, sharing, or possessing non-consensual AI-generated explicit content is considered a serious criminal offense, and legal experts even confirmed the act carried a mandatory prison sentence up to 7 years, leaving Johnny facing harassment charges that could end his streaming streaming career forever. In response to the warrant, Johnny and his bodyguard would turn themselves in to the police a few days later on November 8th and would make a public statement on Korean television.
I just want to apologize for what I've done, and I really did not mean to hurt your guys' pride this much. You guys are a good people. You guys are a great people.
Now, even as he stood before the cameras, pretending to be remorseful, it was clear that Johnny didn't truly mean a word of what he said. And even his fake apology wasn't enough to save him from getting charged over the convenience store clip, and he was ordered to remain in the country while awaiting his verdict. Now, he actually tried to convince the South Korean public that he was done with his trolling and harassment, but the moment he was released from jail, he again quickly abandoned that act.
Just saying I'm getting 29 years. Y'all not gonna catch me alive. Dennis Rodman? I'm the next Dennis Rodman.
Johnny officially returned to streaming on March 7th, planning to broadcast his own trial.
I will be live streaming the trial. I will be live streaming before, during, and after.
But when the day came, he showed up late, noticeably drunk, and walked into the courthouse wearing a mega hat, which immediately caused problems. Now, another YouTuber named Atozi, who attended the trial, also noticed that Johnny was carrying a massive water bottle, and once everyone realized why, it became clear he wasn't taking any of this seriously.
On top of that, he was also carrying a massive water bottle. That's not allowed in court either. He got in trouble for that, and the reason he had that water bottle was presumably because he decided to go live last night at 3 in the morning, and he drank a bunch on the stream, so he was too drunk to make it to court on time. So that water bottle was most likely to sober himself up, because he showed up to court more than an hour late.
Due to the state in which he arrived at the courthouse, the hearing ended up being postponed, and based on what people saw that day, many believed he was now facing multiple years in prison, especially as new charges continued to emerge while the case moved forward.
Then, he had a massive smile on his face until the judge started reading all of his charges. So the people who witnessed this, they're believing that he's looking at about 3 to 5 years in prison at least for all of this. And then also they announced a new case.
However, as the new trial date approached, his behavior spiraled even further. A few weeks later, he was seen screaming in the streets, almost completely unclothed and drunk. He then wandered through the city in nothing but his underwear until a police officer stopped him, arrested him, and took him to the station.
Korea #1, yes! Korea. Oh, police? Oh, what the are you? Relax. No touch. Why are you touching me? Why are you touching me? I'm jogging. Why are you touching?
But because he was already in the middle of a pending trial, they let him go. Now, soon after he left the station, a still intoxicated Johnny began live streaming inside a store, blasting again loud text-to-speech donations through his speakers. And one of the donations played a goofy German song, and Johnny responded by throwing an anti-Semitic salute. Now, during another stream, he revealed another brand new deepfake video he created.
No one ever show that.
His drunken rants and hollow threats were one thing, but directly committing crimes during an active court case was just a recipe for disaster, which earned him an additional charge related to explicit non-consensual content, pushing a situation from bad to catastrophic. At this point, Johnny was facing 2 obstruction of business charges, each carrying a 5-year sentence, along with 2 charges related to unlawful acts involving another person, which totaled 21 years. Altogether, he was staring down at around 31 years behind bars. But Johnny had grown reckless, and the rising danger only pushed him further. He even claimed that if he were ever infected with HIV or AIDS, he'd turn himself into a super spreader, trying to infect as many unaffected people as possible.
If I ever caught HIV, I would become a super spreader. I'll say it right now. I don't care.
And he even made things worse by threatening the judge on his case and their family during a live stream.
Causing anxiety by carrying a fish. Tell the judge you can suck my. I'll bring a fish to your mother's house.
His next court case appeared on May 16th of 2025, where he pleaded guilty to every charge except the ones tied to the deepfake videos. Yet even with 1 foot practically in a jail cell, Johnny still didn't stop. He tried to imitate the female streamer featured in his AI videos, hinting that she could actually face legal troubles if she kept pursuing the case.
She showed that image as well on her stream, right? So guess who went to the police station? I put charges on Bong Bong. Bong Bong getting charged too.
And as of today, he actually still streams on a site called Party, broadcasting to a tiny audience, while clips of his behavior continue to spread across YouTube. This next case, however, involves a couple who suddenly found themselves targeted for their money. It was 10:51 p.m. on March 2nd, 2025. 31-year-old American influencer Caitlin Siragusa, known online as Amaranth, had been lying in bed at home trying to fall asleep when she suddenly woke up to the sound of 2 heavy thuds coming from the floor below her. At first, she wasn't sure what it was. The noise didn't sound like her dog's, and it didn't sound like her husband Nick either. The only thing she could compare it to was someone possibly breaking into the house. And so scrambling for her phone, she called Nick, and when he picked up, she immediately asked where he was. And although he told her that he was on the property, he explained that he wasn't in another building across the driveway. But within minutes, threats, those thoughts escalated into a sharp, violent crash. And before she could react, 3 masked men had smashed through the sliding door beneath her floor and within seconds forced their way into her bedroom. One of them raised a gun to her head. They screamed at her to get up, and as she panicked, unsure of what any of them wanted, they struck her repeatedly with a pistol, while one of the intruders demanded to know where her cryptocurrency was. Now knowing that they were after her money, Caitlin realized that this was likely connected to a post she'd made on Twitter just days earlier, where she mentioned having more than $20 million. What the intruders didn't know, however, was that she was still on the phone with Nick, who was now aware of everything happening on the other end of the line. And as soon as he heard the screaming, the threats, and the sound of them hurting her, he rushed into the bathroom to grab his registered gun and put on a Kevlar vest he kept for emergencies. Meanwhile, Caitlin remained cornered by the 3 men, and because they clearly had no understanding of how crypto actually worked or how complicated the process was to transfer anything close to that amount, she began thinking of a way to turn the situation around. She started leading them through the kitchen, dragged by her hair by one of the men, while the 2 others followed behind, shouting at her to find the crypto immediately. She kept moving, guiding them across the driveway and toward the building where she knew that Nick was waiting. Nick, on the other hand, had been watching the situation develop the entire time, and after leaving the bathroom with the gun, he went straight into their surveillance room where every camera feed was displayed in front of him. And even though he and Caitlin weren't communicating, he still understood exactly where she was moving and what he needed to be ready for. From there, additional surveillance footage showed Caitlin entering the hallway with the 3 men still close behind her. She opened the door to the stairwell and stepped inside, and the intruders followed immediately after.
Come on. Go.
Once she reached the bottom of the stairs, Caitlin pressed herself against the wall and looked up, and that was when she saw Nick. He was standing at the top of the staircase with the gun raised, aiming directly at the men behind her. Realizing that this was the only moment he had to save them from the attackers, he shouted for Caitlin to duck, giving her only a split second to react before he fired 3 shots toward the intruders. As soon as the shots were fired, the men turned around and sprinted out of the building. Surveillance footage captured them running across the property and disappearing into the distance, with one of them yelling that he'd been hit. Nick chose not to chase them. Instead, he focused on getting Caitlin to safety. He also brought her upstairs and into their panic room before barricading the door and calling the police. He also used her Twitter account to get immediate attention, posting, "I'm being robbed at gunpoint. This is not a prank. Help." Within minutes, multiple officers arrived, secured both of them, and confirmed that the intruders had already fled. And the only thing taken was Caitlin's MacBook, which, considering the circumstances, was the result of both of them reacting quickly and doing what they could to control the situation. But what neither of them knew at the time was that this wouldn't be the last encounter, because later that evening, they would cross paths with one of the attackers again. Because of the injuries she suffered from being beaten, pushed around, and pistol whipped, Caitlin went to the hospital to get treatment from the bruises on her faces and hands. And after she was discharged and returned home, she remembered her stolen laptop and decided to track its location. And that's when she realized that the MacBook had actually pinged at the same hospital she had just been in, almost certainly because one of the attackers needed medical attention after being shot and still had the laptop with them. And although police hadn't yet figured out how the intruders learned where Caitlin lived, the investigation eventually led detectives to an apartment complex after a resident reported that the license plates had been stolen from 2 vehicles. And while searching the area, officers found school paperwork with the name DeMarcus Morris. And not long after that, another report came in about a dark-colored Toyota matching the description of the vehicle used in the home invasion. Then on March 5th, license plate cameras picked up the same Toyota in traffic, and a trooper pulled it over in Galveston County after the driver failed to use a turn signal. The driver, identified as Brian Anthony Salazar Guerrero, was arrested for not having a valid license. And once the police searched the vehicle, they found a large blood stain on the rear passenger seat. And during questioning during the home invasion, he also confessed that his friend Dylan Nashel Campbell had coordinated the crime and that he didn't know the other 2 suspects involved. Brian admitted he'd agreed to drive in exchange for a cut of the stolen cryptocurrency, and he confirmed that he dropped off one of the suspects at the hospital after Nick shot him. And so investigators now at DeMarcus, Dylan, and Brian, each between the ages of 17 and 19, with the 4th suspect remaining unnamed because he was a minor. With all 4 finally arrested, each suspect was charged with aggravated kidnapping and aggravated robbery with a deadly weapon. But unlike the intruders in this case, this next incident wasn't driven by money, but by a level of anger that quickly spiraled out of control.
Come on, man. We're leaving, man. We're walking away, bro. Let's not take it serious. Let's go. Come on, Roger. Let's go. Let's go, Roger. Let's go.
On August 23, 2025, 25-year-old professional MMA fighter and kick live streamer Raja Jackson was invited by his coach, Andre Hudson, known in the ring as AJ Mana, to attend a wrestling event called Knox Wrestling, where AJ was performing. And although Raja didn't care much about wrestling, he went anyway just to support his coach. After arriving outside the venue, Andre led Raja backstage to meet the other wrestlers performing that night. And while interacting and bantering with them, Raja was suddenly approached by another wrestler named Psycho Stu, who looked visibly drunk. And what started as what seemed like a stage altercation quickly escalated. Without warning, Psycho smashed a beer can over Raja's head.
Hey, I think that's a little... Oh! Oh, you don't sell it?
Now, from the footage alone, it looked like Psycho attacked Raja for no real reason. And even though some online comments suggested the can might have been just a wrestling prop that didn't actually hurt, Raja still reacted by getting right into Psycho's face. However, during the altercation, Psycho asked Raja if he was going to sell it, which in pro wrestling terminology meant if he was going to play into his wrestling storyline, where he would pretend the attack was serious and intended.
What was that? What's that? You don't sell it?
Dude, he's not a fucking
bro.
worker, bro.
Hold on. I don't play.
Oh, sorry.
No,
we're good. I know you will. We're good.
But when he saw Raja had no clue about what he said, he immediately realized that Raja wasn't in the business and reached out to apologize.
Rampage. And so, yeah.
No, bro.
Go ahead, Stu.
Raja initially refused, but after the other wrestlers explained the situation to him and Psycho approached him again to apologize and clarify that he was only trying to set up a storyline for the event, Raja finally understood what was going on and accepted the apology.
I appreciate it.
I didn't know. I thought you were.
But even though Psycho had calmed down for the moment, that wouldn't last. A few hours later, everything would take a turn for the worse. Once Raja and Andre were inside the venue, Andre kept voicing his disapproval of what Psycho had done, even though the situation was already resolved, pushing Raja to stay angry. He told Raja to give Psycho his receipt, basically telling him to jump into Psycho's match. And this pushed Raja towards wanting to fight him in the ring, and with his chat constantly getting under his skin and provoking him to jump Psycho live, he made them an offer.
50 subs, knock him out. 50 subs.
The situation, along with his frustration, kept escalating until around 10 minutes before the match, when something extremely telling took place.
Exactly. Watch. My dad can't never call me a straight up.
Raja kept bringing up his dad, Rampage Jackson, who was a well-known MMA fighter, saying he would never let his dad call him a coward by backing away from the situation. But as soon as Psycho entered the ring for his match, Raja was visibly and silently shaking with anger. Now, while the match was going on and Raja got his cue to enter, he rushed in and to everyone's shock, viciously hurt Psycho. He slammed him on his head and even worse, punched him more than 20 times after he was already unconscious. Another wrestler, Doug Malo, who later claimed the promotion told him to stand by in case something went wrong with Raja, jumped in as soon as he saw how brutal the situation was and pulled Raja off Psycho's unconscious body. But it didn't end there, because once Doug intervened, a scuffle broke out between them, with Raja splitting Doug's eye open with a punch before Doug fought back with multiple strikes. Other wrestlers then stepped in to help Doug restrain Raja and throw him out of the venue, leaving an audience, especially of women and young children, completely terrified by what they'd just seen. Having left the venue, Raja continued roaming around, still visibly furious and screaming. And throughout this part of the stream, his chat began to notice how often he defended himself, insisting that he wasn't a coward and that he was tired of people belittling him.
Tired of motherfuckers playing with me, bro. Real shit. One of them bit me. I'm tired of everybody playing with me and shit. Think I'm always playing and shit. Call me and shit. None of bro. At the end of the day, I'ma stand up for myself because I'm tired of everybody playing with me, bro. Real.
But just a few minutes later, another unnamed wrestler confronted him outside, and Raja immediately flew off the handle again, threatening to fight him and saying he'd do the same to this guy as he did to Psycho.
Come on, man. We're leaving, man. We're walking away, bro. Let's not take it serious. Let's go. Come on, Roger. Let's go. Let's go, Roger. Let's go. Roger, let's go. Roger, I'm telling you, let's go. You listen to me. Listen to me, Roger. You need to listen to me right now, Roger. Let's go.
I don't give a you guys trying to jump me and
let's go.
You ain't gonna do to me, bro.
And even though his cameraman managed to pull him away and defuse the situation, Raja then got a phone call from Andre, who just learned what had happened inside with Psycho. Andre told him he never wanted things to go that far and claimed that they were still trying to wake up Psycho in the venue. Raja only replied, "My bad," before hanging up.
Pissed me off though, Andre. My bad. I'll call you back later.
Meanwhile, inside the venue, Psycho was still unconscious, and once paramedics arrived, it was confirmed that Raja had not only broken multiple bones in his face, but had also knocked out most of his teeth, which caused him to choke on them before help got there. He was put on a stretcher and rushed to the hospital, where he was then placed on a breathing tube in critical condition, with no clear answer whether he was going to survive this brutal attack. This clip began spreading almost immediately, both because it happened on a live stream and due to the severity of the situation, and it eventually caught the attention of Raja's dad, Rampage Jackson, who at the time was streaming with another well-known streamer, Sneeko. And and when they continued watching the footage, both of them were clearly shocked. Although Rampage's first reaction was questioning whether Raja would be banned on Kick instead of showing any concern for the man his son had nearly killed.
Raja broke somebody's face. My son broke somebody's face. Is Raja in trouble? Is he gonna get banned for it?
Shortly after the incident, Raja was permanently banned and has remained so from that point forward. At first, the news would primarily be spread around the MMA community, with various prominent figures condemning the actions of Raja, which led to another response from Rampage, this time on Twitter, where he posted,
"I want to clear up the misinformation about my son Raja. I've been confirmed that the wrestler Stuart Smith, also known as Psycho Stu, is awake and stable. Raja was unexpectedly hit in the side of the head by him moments before Smith's match. Raja was told that he could get his payback in the ring. I thought it was part of the show. It was a bad judgment and it worked that went wrong. Raja is an MMA fighter and not a pro wrestler and had no business being involved in an event like this. I don't condone my son's actions at all. He suffered a concussion from sparring only days ago and had no business doing anything remotely close to physical contact."
The concussion that Rampage mentioned had actually happened the day before the assault. During training, Raja's sparring partner threw an irresponsible spinning kick that wobbled him and left him with a concussion. But in his tweet, Rampage continued by saying,
"As a father, I'm deeply concerned with his health and well-being of Mr. Smith. That being said, I'm very upset that any of this happened, but my main concern now is that Mr. Smith will make a speedy recovery. I apologize on his behalf and to Kick for the situation."
Many commenters immediately took issue with this response, pointing out that the entire incident was streamed live on Kick, so the idea that this was all some kind of misunderstanding could be disproven by simply watching the footage. People in the MMA community also made it clear that a concussion was no excuse for what many saw as attempted murder, and despite the various flaws that could be seen in the response from Rampage, he at least still showed empathy towards Psycho and clearly condemned the actions of his son. But in the weeks that followed, more information surfaced about Psycho's condition. After being rushed into intensive care immediately after the incident, he later explained he suffered a severe head injury, trauma to both jaws, a lacerated upper lip, and multiple lost teeth before being discharged on August 31st. And with those injuries confirmed, the legal process around Raja continued to move forward. Now, Raja was actually arrested on September 18 and arraigned on October 9, where he entered a not guilty plea to one count of felony battery causing serious bodily injury, along with a misdemeanor battery charge. Now, as of now, his next court date is scheduled on November 24. Unlike this incident, however, the next case began with a single allegation, one that would set off a chain of events involving multiple innocent lives.
They behind me. They gonna kill me, y'all. I'm gonna make them kill me, y'all.
On December 28, 2024, 36-year-old Antavius Brown sped through the streets of Columbia, South Carolina, with numerous police officers chasing him. He had nothing to lose anymore, as the life he'd built for himself and his family was now completely destroyed, and the events that followed would end in a tragedy involving innocent lives. But to understand how he ended up in this situation, we have to take a step back and look at the incident that caused everything to fall apart. This is Antavius, founder of GB Tequila, recording artist, and a father who adored both of his sons, whom we'll call Ethan and Josh, along with his girlfriend, Nudira Tapia. And while they were living a life that seemed full of joy and success, the first cracks in their family would begin to show just days before Christmas. On December 23rd, 2024, as they were getting ready for Christmas Eve, Antavius made a post on Facebook saying,
"I just want to say I appreciate all the love and support. Life has been a real journey, and overall I'm blessed no matter the way it goes."
And while hundreds of people reacted to his post with care and affection, they were met with something none of them expected, when just minutes later, Antavius published another message.
"When I know I'm righteous, I'll go to war with whoever and die about it. Don't play in my face or whip my name. Win, lose or draw, I'll throw it all on the line."
As this post spread through his following, Nudira's mother, Maria, came across it, and moments later, people in the comment section saw yet another message appear. This time it was Maria, responding directly to him, writing,
"Hello everyone, for those who don't know me, I'm Lada Ma Popular's mother. I don't understand how a person can be so bad. You're definitely not a man. You have no respect. I want to tell everyone, if anything happens to my daughter, they already know who was a violent and bad man. Don't believe everything he's saying. He's out of his mind."
And as more and more people watched this unsettling exchange play out, they began to wonder what was actually happening behind the scenes. And not long after, Antavius decided to go live to explain the situation.
Don't allow fake love, obligations, and expectation. Give a what you think about me. You ain't live my shoes. Your story, my story, my story. You feel how you feel how I feel. I'm a man just like you. I put on my pants and my two shoes too. But one thing I ain't gonna let nobody do. Nobody, you feel me, is play with my feelings, my heart, my emotion. Anybody know me, they know I step with everything I do, you feel me, because I'm passionate about everything I do.
Shortly after the live, dozens of comments began discussing what he meant by having his feelings and heart played, until one alleged relative of his, named Drumont, made a comment saying,
"I talked to him the day he caught his girl cheating, and again 2 days after. The second time I spoke to him, he really didn't want to talk about it, because his son was coming to see him, and he didn't want to have bad vibes around his son for the holidays. Why can't you all understand? This man was truly hurt by another man being with his girl, in their home, where he pays bills."
And with Nudira's cheating allegations spreading across their community, she grabbed her phone and went live as well, hoping to share her side of the story.
I also wanted to come here to clarify some things, because I know some of you, if not all of you, are seeing that some crazy things happening on the social media with me and my ex-partner, right? I'm not going to get into details, but what I am going to say is, if you personally know me, then you know this is not for you. This is mainly for the people who don't personally know me and are only hearing one side of the story.
After responding to the accusations, it seemed like things were finally clearing up. But what fans didn't know that this one allegation would become the catalyst for a horrifying tragedy. On a typical weekend on December 28th, as Nudira's friends commented on one of her posts to check on her well-being, she suddenly gave a haunting reply.
You good, boo? No, my life and others are in danger.
And just a few hours later, Nudira was confronted by Antavius inside their home, still convinced she had cheated on him. Their argument escalated quickly, with Ethan and Josh standing by and watching everything unfold. And when Nudira couldn't take it anymore, realizing the danger she and her children were now in, she grabbed the boys and ran for the front door. But as soon as they reached the doorway, Antavius pulled out a gun from his waistband, and a single shot echoed through the house. Shockingly, Nudira felt the bullet tear into her leg, and as Ethan and Josh began panicking, Antavius walked towards them and forced the wounded Nudira into a car, while the kids watched their bleeding mother being driven away. Antavius drove her to a nearby hospital, and once they arrived, medical staff rushed to her side. While they treated her, she pleaded with the nurses, terrified for her safety, saying,
He shot me. Please don't tell him that I told you, but he's the one who shot me. He's going to go back to the house. Please don't let him kill the...
Antavius grew more agitated and would threaten to go back to the house and hurt the little humans and himself. After leaving the hospital, he took off without anyone knowing where he would go, prompting a quiet signal between staff members to call the police, who were already responding to reports of the shooting at the Crosshill Apartments, the same street where Nudira lived with their kids. The authorities obtained a description of Antavius' vehicle, a 2021 Dodge sedan, which the South Carolina Highway Patrol later found parked behind a business on the 4000 block of Leesburg Road. And since this area fell under the Richland County Sheriff's Department, deputies were brought in to assist. And while the officers tried to make contact and take Antavius into custody, he instead, in a desperate attempt to evade legal consequences, hit the gas and fled the scene. This both resulted in a pursuit involving both Columbia Police and Richland County Sheriff. And while being chased, Antavius started a live stream.
They behind me. They gonna kill me, y'all. I'm gonna make them kill me, y'all.
As he continued repeating that this was the day he would die, he suddenly collided with a 2001 Toyota SUV, about 6 miles from where the officers first attempted to stop and 4 miles from his home. But even after the impact, he kept driving until he crashed into a 2005 Toyota sedan, driven by a 52-year-old Ryan Heyman, who'd stopped at a traffic light with a stop. Once police arrived, they found Antavius in his car with a likely self-inflicted gunshot wound. Paramedics rushed him, along with everyone else involved, to the hospital. But at 10:30 p.m., less than an hour after the pursuit began, doctors confirmed that Antavius hadn't survived the impact. And while they gave their best efforts to save the others, Ryan and his dog suffered injuries that were far too severe, and unfortunately, neither of them made it. The condition of the sedan's driver, on the other hand, was never clearly reported, but Nudira at least would recover from her wounds, and Ethan and Josh were eventually found safe and physically unharmed. This next incident, however, began with a betrayal that would set off a series of events with devastating consequences. Gang Shouyang was a 29-year-old man from China who had a passion for traveling to as many countries in the world as he could, and along his journey he decided to visit a continent where he would stay a little longer, Africa. Although he never actually planned to stay there, the more he moved through different regions, the harder it became for him to leave. And by the time he reached Zambia, he felt connected to the place in a way he hadn't anywhere else. That feeling eventually pushed him to look for work so he could remain there. Now, not much is known about what his early travels looked like before this point, but it was in Zambia where he met a local girl named Margaret. Their first conversations were simple, yet they clicked right away. The two started to share their affection with each other before eventually becoming an actual couple. Now, most of their time together was spent exploring the country, trying new food, and sharing the parts of Zambia they both appreciated. As they continued traveling, Gang started filming the moments he experienced, and it didn't take long before he realized he wanted to share them with the rest of the world, which led him to start posting his clips online under the name Fatty Goes to Africa. And almost immediately, the videos gained a lot of attention. Viewers in China specifically enjoyed watching him move from place to place, meeting new people and tasting dishes most of them had never heard of. And with Margaret now joining in on nearly every trip, the two would end up documenting more of the continent along with their audience witnessing their every journey. In the months that followed, Gang gained a staggering following of almost 5 million, and even though it was just Margaret and him traveling at first, he even eventually brought some of his fans along, and their growing team began creating content together. And with Gang as the face of the group, they started appearing on social media platforms more often. But while most of them got along, this wasn't the case for 37-year-old Feng Shengyang, otherwise known online as Ayun, who had also started spending time with them. Other members of the group said Feng would make unusually awkward content, which stood in stark contrast to the cheerful vlogs they were producing. Gang, on the other hand, had no issues with Feng and still welcomed him into the team and even inspired him to keep creating content. Yet even with Gang trying to keep him involved, tensions inside the group began to build off camera, and before long, Feng was removed from the team. To Gang's surprise though, Feng stayed in contact. He understood the situation and continued speaking with him and worked on his own content while traveling around the world alone. And for a while it seemed like there was no tension between them, despite what had happened. But a situation would soon unfold that changed both of their lives forever. In 2022, their friendship began to fall apart over an alleged robbery. Gang was preparing to return to China for a short time, and before he left, Feng said he gave him 10,000 won, roughly roughly $1,400 to buy him a new iPhone. But when Gang came back, Feng claimed he never received the phone or the money. He took his frustrations online and criticized Gang publicly, which caused some viewers to turn against him. However, Gang denied the accusations and ignored the comments, as he didn't want to draw attention to Feng, who he once considered as someone he could trust. But much to Gang's dismay, the accusations didn't stop there. Feng also claimed that Gang and his friends had sent COVID-infected food to his home and even showed up in person to wreak havoc in his house. And unknown to them, these allegations would set in motion a chain of events that would end in tragedy. On December 4th, 2022, Gang went live from Nepal with two members of his team, Lee Shuzan and Wang. They'd been staying there for a few days, and the stream was going normally until someone in the chat mentioned that Feng was in the country too. Gang didn't look surprised. He said he already knew that and told his viewers that he'd come to Nepal to find Feng and beat him up. However, Gang wasn't aware that Feng was actually watching the stream too, and he'd been moving around the same area, close enough to follow Gang without being noticed. And at around 10:30 AM near Indra Shok in Kathmandu, he finally stepped in. Feng pulled out a knife and lunged at them, stabbing Gang in the chest, the stomach, and lastly the left side of his head. Lee, completely caught off guard, was also stabbed multiple times in the stomach, while Wang, who was the farthest away from Feng, managed to get away. The livestream cut out with high-pitched screams and the camera shaking across the pavement, and Gang was half sitting in the middle of the street, covered in blood and disoriented, pressing his hand against his stomach to check the wound while gesturing for a phone, signaling the people around him to call for help, as Feng stood over him yelling in Chinese. And because nobody near could understand the language and were too shocked to process what was happening, several minutes passed before anyone reached out to emergency services, and it was only when Wang returned to see what was going on that help was finally called. As soon as paramedics arrived, they immediately rushed Gang to the National Trauma Center, but unfortunately Gang wasn't able to survive these fatal injuries. Lee, on the other hand, was able to pull through, while Feng was quickly arrested by police officers and was sent straight to jail. This next case, however, involves someone whose final moments were captured live, exposing a horrifying scene to thousands of viewers.
Mexican authorities are investigating the murder of a TikTok beauty influencer.
Valerie Marquez was a 23-year-old rising Mexican influencer known for beauty and makeup content. Her popularity grew through the videos she posted online and her modeling career, which began back in 2018 when she was only 60, and this helped her solidify her image, especially among younger audiences in Western Mexico. Her success even allowed her to open her own beauty salon, Japopan, Jalisco, which only strengthened the belief that she was heading towards something bigger. Her life seemed to be moving forward, steady and promising, until the day everything came to a full stop. On May 13th, 2025, she began her morning live stream by telling her viewers that she was exhausted, and some of them noticed right away that something felt off. She didn't explain what was weighing on her though, and no one really knew what was going through her head. But as the day continued, it became clear that she wasn't ready for what waited for her that afternoon. After finishing her morning live stream, Valeria went back to her salon. She served a few clients throughout the day and then returned to streaming once more. She sat in front of the camera with a plush toy in her hands, talking casually with her viewers, and planned to wind down for the rest of the afternoon. But a few minutes later, she mentioned something that immediately stood out. She told her audience that someone had stopped by the salon earlier while she was out, claiming they had an expensive gift for her. The situation, however, just felt weird, since Valeria said that she hadn't ordered anything online, nor was she expecting a present from anyone. The driver would apparently return later that afternoon, and her friend who was with her in the salon, who we'll call Lorraine, told her to stay put and wait. Now, only a couple of minutes passed before Valeria looked towards the door and saw a man walking up with a box in his hand, and when he stepped inside, the viewers heard him ask one question:
"Are you Valeria?" And
before she could respond, 3 gunshots echoed through the entire salon. The live stream, which had been pointed at Valeria the whole time, captured a horrifying scene as she was shot. One bullet hitting her chest, another one to the neck, and the last one to the head. Her body immediately collapsed into the chair, and the stream continued eerily for several more moments, until the camera caught a glimpse of Lorraine's face, with a chilling, unusually quiet expression as he switched the stream up. Emergency services arrived quickly, but unfortunately there was no chance of saving Valeria from her fatal injuries, and she sadly passed away. The gunman, however, was nowhere to be found, as he and his gateway driver fled the scene immediately on a motorbike waiting for him outside. The autopsy confirmed Valeria's death from the gunshot wounds, with the incident being investigated as a possible femicide, which is the killing of women or girls for reasons of gender. And while no arrests have been made as of now, the authorities stated that they were looking into more than just one suspect, and are currently checking the CCTV footage and tracking Valeria's social media accounts for clues as to who the attackers might be. This next case, however, shows how greed and deceit can escalate into violence, capturing a horrifying scene live on camera.
On the 11th of March 2025, a 22-year-old influencer by the name of Mogami was stabbed live on stream in broad daylight Japan.
A 22-year-old influencer known online as Mogami is walking alone through a quiet residential street near Takadanobaba Station in Shinjuku, Tokyo. But during what should have been an ordinary morning turned into something else, when a masked man wearing a black hat suddenly approached her and without warning began to stab her multiple times. And when officers arrived minutes later, they found Irie collapsed on the pavement, covered in blood, while the suspect stood nearby, still holding the knife. And the big question was, who was behind this brutal attack and what led to it in the first place? It was December 2021. Irie Sato, also known as Mogami, was one of the top performers on a streaming site site called whowatch.tv. The site was often referred to by Japanese users as Fuwachi, and Irie was very active there, mainly doing chatting streams where she talked and interacted with her viewers in real time. She would also sometimes take on creative challenges, going outdoors or talking to strangers. On a random day during this time, she met a 42-year-old man named Kenji Takano, who had found her stream and liked her personality, which led him to start donating money to show support. A few months would pass, and by then he was spending more than 100,000 yen a month, equivalent to around $800 at the time. And this quickly caught Irie's attention, of course, since she wasn't even a full-time streamer yet and was still working at a restaurant. And after donating over hundreds of thousands of yen to her in the first few months of 2022, Irie decided to reach out to Kenji directly and message him online, the most popular messaging app in Japan. And once she got in touch with him, things would start to take a darker turn. A couple of months later, in September 2022, she would begin asking him to lend her money directly, not through stream donations, but to her bank account. And in one of their conversations, she said she'd forgotten her wallet at work and really needed money, promising she would pay him back the next day or the day after. She specified,
"I want the money transferred to the cash card I have at home, preferably right now."
And within a minute, Kenji responded,
"Can I just transfer it now? How much do you need?"
She told him she needed a few tens of thousands of yen, and even though she said she would pay him back, this was only the beginning of her asking for more. Not even 6 days after she said she lost her wallet, she went ahead and asked him for another 20,000 yen and wouldn't take no for an answer. And when Kenji told her he couldn't pay her with his card, she told him to transfer directly from his bank account instead. And this would keep happening almost every week, and the amounts she asked for just kept increasing, and her excuses became even stranger. In one instance, she told Kenji that her sister was pregnant and that she needed cash to help take care of the baby. Believing her, Kenji sent even more money. But a little over a month later, things would begin to spiral out of control, as Kenji would reveal how far he was willing to go for her. In one of their poorly translated conversations, Kenji told Irie he was worried about his financial situation after giving her so much money. She then asked him where he got all of it in the first place, and he replied saying,
"iFull and Late,"
which were the two biggest loan companies in the country. However, instead of being concerned that he was taking out loans just to give her money, Irie told him to get another loan from a third company to pay off the first two. And that's when Kenji revealed something even more disturbing.
"It's really tough. Soon it'll be revealed that I lied and borrowed."
He admitted he'd faked his income and work details just to get approved. And rather than stopping him, I doubled down and said,
"I looked into it, and if you're self-employed or receive money in a tax-friendly way, you can still borrow even if you can't prove it, so it wouldn't be a lie."
Kenji tried to make her understand, explaining that he'd lied about his annual income and working hours, but she didn't care. She kept telling him to apply anyway, saying that even if he wasn't a regular employee, it wouldn't matter, and that companies often didn't confirm anything. By this point, Kenji said he'd been ignoring the credit companies, and that a lump sum bill would probably arrive soon. And to make matters worse, he actually listed his parents' address on the applications, so his entire family was involved. He said,
"I'm getting scared of lying to borrow money now."
Brushing it off as something that wasn't a big deal for her, she told him that there was nothing she could do, and that she'd already done it once before. From these messages alone, it was clear that he wasn't trying to be inappropriate. He just wanted to help her. He liked her streams and wanted to support her, and when she reached out to him, he couldn't bring himself to say no, but Irie knew exactly how to use that against him. In early November of 2022, Kenji said he'd applied for another loan from Lake just to send her more money, to which she reacted excitedly. But minutes later, she said something that revealed what she truly wanted from him.
"I want to die if I can't borrow money."
Kenji, now worried, told her not to say that, but she kept going, saying she wanted to do it, obviously in an attempt to manipulate him into giving her more, all to feed her greed. Later that night, after Kenji had fallen asleep for a while, he texted her that he'd woken up, and she told him that she couldn't live without him, and he said he felt the same. The conversation ended with her thanking him and saying she loved him, but Kenji's fantasy would come crashing down when creditors started calling him. He had given Irie over 2.5 million yen, more than $22,000 at the time, and nearly half of it was borrowed money. Around the end of January 2023, he started asking Irie to return the money he'd lent her, not all at once, but gradually.
"Tomorrow is the repayment date, so please. Sorry, can it be 2 days? Well, somehow. Please come on the 2nd.
And when February came, he messaged again.
"Please deposit. What's going on? You said on the 2nd, so I moved it to the 2nd.
He would continue asking the next day, and by February 5th, his tone had changed.
"You're not going to pay me back anymore?"
Irie replied that she would, saying she planned to return it soon, with Kenji showing signs of doubts in her words. And 6 days would pass, and Kenji said,
"I'm barely making ends meet, so unless you transfer the money, I won't be able to pay anything in advance. Please transfer the money."
A few days later, he wrote again, saying he guessed he wouldn't get his money back, and then asked if she was still waiting to refund it, but this time she didn't reply. From there, things would only get worse for Kenji. While the creditors were going after him, he saw Irie live streaming as usual, smiling and receiving donations, and even celebrated her engagement to a new fiancé. She bragged online about living with him in a high-rise apartment, clearly doing well for herself, and yet Kenji hadn't seen a single yen returned to him. But instead of giving up, he decided to take it to court. In December of 2023, after filing a lawsuit against her to get his money back, the case finally reached its conclusion, and Kenji actually won, and the court ruled that Irie had to pay back every yen he'd lent her, a total of 2.5 million, plus a 3% annual interest until full payment. On paper, justice was served. The court fully sided with him, acknowledging that he'd been living in poverty and had no stable income at the time, and for a moment, it felt like relief for Kenji, but that feeling didn't last long. Irie treated the situation lightly during her streams. She mentioned the lawsuit casually, as if it wasn't serious, and implied that dealing with people asking for their money back was a minor annoyance, rather than a real issue. She made it clear that she saw the case as something she could just handle on her own terms, without any concern for Kenji. Now Kenji continued watching her streams, hoping that maybe she'd show some kind of remorse, but what he saw only made his frustration grow even further. Irie had earned a platinum badge on WhoWatch, marking her as one of the platform's top streamers, and at that level she was earning between 300,000 to 400,000 yen a month from donations. Yet he still hadn't seen a single yen return, despite the court ruling, and it got only more unbearable for Kenji when he discovered that she had a Twitter account that was dedicated entirely to poker, with her first post showing her holding a bag full of chips worth 542,000 yen, revealing where a lot of his money might have gone. 2 whole years of constant manipulation and financial strain had worn Kenji down, and on March 7, 2025, he sent Irie one final message, blaming himself for falling in love and being deceived. He asked her one last time,
"Please give me my money back. I'm in the negative because of the consumer loans I borrowed to lend to you, and I can't live."
He would even stoop so low, desperately adding,
"Can you somehow pay me back at least 10,000 yen?"
And even with all of his efforts to reach out to Irie and fix his life, he was still ultimately ignored by her. And from there, something in him snapped. 4 days later, Irie went live, streaming around the Shinjuku area. Kenji saw this and recognized the location and decided to go see her. He took Oyama Station, the closest to him, and rode for almost 2 hours down to Shinjuku. And back to the intro, she started streaming near Takadanobaba Station before moving towards Shin Okubo, and he followed her on the metro. Eventually, he figured out where she was streaming from and made his way straight to her tripod setup. And upon finally seeing her in person, he did something unspeakable. Using a knife that was 13 centimeters long, he stabbed her multiple times, each strike landing with a blank, empty look in his eyes. Midstream, Irie screamed for help as the attack unfolded, with concerned viewers flooding her chat and panic. Unsure of what was happening, she tried to run, trying for help, but after around 15 seconds, she collapsed to the ground, her phone still recording as everything continued. Even more terrifyingly, it didn't end here. Moments later, Kenji, wearing a mask, appeared on a live stream, eerily staring into the camera. He kept talking to her while she was already on the ground, with sirens echoing faintly in the distance, as he said,
"Are you dead yet?"
and continued kicking her. As soon as the police reached the scene, they saw Irie lying unconscious on the ground, with numerous stab wounds across her upper body and face. Kenji was standing nearby, still holding the knife, and was arrested on the spot. Irie was immediately rushed to the hospital in a critical condition, but despite every effort to save her, she was later pronounced dead. Following the incident, Kenji has been in custody ever since, while formal charges have yet to be filed. What this next case is all about, however, involves someone who was relentlessly tormented and pushed beyond their limits at the hands of those who exploited him on livestream.
But other clips show the 46-year-old being doused in water, shot with paintballs, and apparently even being strangled.
Raphael Graven, better known online as the 46-year-old French streamer Jean Pormanov, was a gamer who mainly went live on the live streaming platform Kick. Having a unique yet outgoing personality, he grew a big following over time, and from there he began to do more IRL streams where he would make content with his so-called streamer friends Owen Kinasandoti and Safin Hamad. However, as he continued to work with them, he would later realize that this was a grave mistake, one that would ultimately cost him his life. In late 2024, Raphael's viewers began to notice that something was off between him and his friends every time they would stream together. While it wasn't obvious at first, Owen and Safin were often seen targeting Raphael, whether by playfully threatening him into doing challenges or physically restraining him while doing things that would degrade him in front of thousands of people. And although some other people on stream would take it as a harmless messing around, things only got worse as the months went by. From here, he would get things thrown at him, having water bottles poured on him while he was duct taped to a chair, and would repeatedly get physically overwhelmed while being made fun of. Unfortunately, this was just the beginning of the constant beating he would go through, and just when it seemed like it couldn't get more horrible, Raphael's friends would start torturing him mentally as well. Owen and the 2 other unnamed people on stream would publicly shame and humiliate Raphael, telling him that he would never find any success with women, calling him a loser and making him feel lesser as a person. But even as he tried to make it clear that he didn't want to be treated this way any longer, the physical and psychological damage he would experience only intensified. He would helplessly get dragged while paint was smothered on him and have other liquids dumped on him while he was unable to move. This led to him breaking down on a later stream, saying he was being treated as garbage while his viewers watched him fall apart. And these incidents began gaining a lot of attention online, and eventually Raphael was given a chance to get out of the situation. On December 15, 2024, a French investigative outlet called Mediapart published an expose alleging that Kick had for months permitted live broadcasts of violent mistreatment. And after seeing this, the authorities took quick notice and opened a judicial inquiry into deliberate vicious acts being streamed on the internet. Raphael was then taken into custody for questioning as part of the investigation, and Owen and Safin, who directly participated in the attacks, were also arrested in January, facing charges related to enticement to hatred, violence against vulnerable people, and dissemination of images that undermine the integrity of individuals. Raphael, however, himself denied the accusations and claimed that the content was staged and was released, and his collaborators were later freed as well, leaving the case unresolved. Now a few months would pass, and despite the recent investigation into his streaming partners, Raphael continued to stream extreme content on Kick with them. He and his so-called friend maintained that the harsh antics were consensual and only for entertainment, which resulted in no immediate legal action stopping their broadcasts. And because of this, he was still regularly seen on stream being physically harmed and humiliated. He would get punched, suffocated, pushed out of his chair, and have his airway blocked while being restrained, and even got put into a chokehold. With the physical and mental trauma he'd been constantly experiencing, their audience began noticing that he was turning pale and that his body was in far worse condition than before. And now that he was starting to realize his health was in real danger, he sent a troubling yet heartbreaking message to his mother, whom we'll name Sonia, saying,
"Hey mom, how are you? Stuck to death with this game. I'm going way too far. I feel like I'm being held hostage with their shitty concept. I'm fed up. I want to get out, but the other guy won't let me. He's holding me hostage."
What came as a deeply worrying text for Sonia, making making her fully aware of her son's deteriorating state, would later become a haunting message tied to the tragedy that would happen to Raphael. On August 10th, 2025, Raphael began a planned 10-day livestream endurance marathon on Kick, which of course was co-hosted by Owen and Safi, and as the days went on, the stream turned into a scene of pure torment. Raphael was subjected to extreme sleep deprivation, physical and verbal attacks, and forced consumption of unknown toxic substances. And with his body and mind at an all-time low, viewers saw him collapse on camera, at times disoriented or in visible distress. But in the final hours of the marathon, on August 18, as Raphael was sleeping, he became unresponsive on stream, and after Owen and Safi woke up and realized what was happening, they attempted to get him up, but it was too late. Panicking, they called the emergency services, and once they arrived, Raphael, unable to withstand everything he'd been put through, was declared dead on the scene. The next day, French authorities acted quickly once Raphael's death hit the news. The prosecutor's office in Nice announced a full judicial investigation into the circumstances of his passing. An autopsy was ordered to determine the exact cause of death, and police were instructed to seize recording equipment and video footage from the house as evidence. Owen and Safi were interviewed as witnesses and claimed that the violence was part of an act, a statement that raised doubts among the investigators. And on August 20th, the case had completely exploded in the public eye, with clip compilations of their streams spreading across every social media platform, showing everything they'd done to Raphael and fueling massive outrage online. As a result, Owen and Safi and everyone who either turned a blind eye or played a part in the attacks on Raphael were exposed for everything they'd done. It turned out that besides all the beatings he'd suffered, he was also put through strangulation attempts, cigarettes exploding near or in his face, electric shocks from a dog collar, and forced sleep deprivation throughout the 10-day livestream, where he'd been jolted awake with either cold water or loud noises. And once these details were confirmed, the French government publicly condemned the incident in the strongest terms. Clara Chapas, the country's minister delegate for digital affairs, referred the case to France's media regulator ARCO and submitted a notice on Pharos, the platform used to report illegal content online. Meanwhile, Kick, the platform where everything had been streamed on, released a public statement offering condolences and promising action in response to what had happened. And although both Kick and the authorities are now acting swiftly to handle the case and hold those responsible accountable, Raphael's death has become one of the most tragic examples of cruelty ever broadcast live online. But this next case centers on a tragic death at the hands of the people he once loved.
I don't think you have empathy. I don't think you have any emotion whatsoever. And that's what scares the court. It really scares me.
Is it going? Hey everybody, just figured I'd send a quick check. For those of you who aren't aware, my little brother has passed away and it's a lot to deal with, but we're fine.
These were the devastating words from Paul Ferguson, Timothy's older brother, who went live to grieve what he said was the sudden death of his sibling. And with the news of this heartbreaking event, it didn't take long before viewers flooded the stream with messages of sympathy and support. But what none of them realized was that this would be the final time Paul ever appeared online, as the internet was about to uncover the horrifying truth about what really happened to Timothy.
911, what's your emergency?
Okay, that'll work. Yeah, and my son's not breathing.
Around 6:37 p.m. on July 6, 2022, police were called to assist with a medical emergency just outside of the city of Grand Rapids, Michigan. Paul and Timothy's mother, Shonda van der Ark, told paramedics that Timothy wasn't breathing, and just 7 minutes after first responders arrived, he was pronounced dead. The officers had never witnessed such a gruesome scene. Timothy was severely malnourished, bruised, and hypothermic, with bones pushing against the skin. Despite standing at 5'8", he weighed only 69 pounds. And what makes the situation even more disturbing was that the investigators found him lying inside a small closet that reeked of urine and feces. A blue tarp lined the floor beside an Amazon box, and just outside the door was a pair of ankle shackles positioned as if waiting for it. The room itself was watched from several angles by cameras, and an alarm had been installed on the door he'd been locked behind. It was clear something was seriously wrong, but the police had no idea just how dark this case would get, and to figure out what they were dealing with, Officer Sean Stefanik pulled Shanda inside on the front porch of her home, where she appeared to be grieving her son's death, hoping she could explain what just happened.
I'm Officer Stefanik. Right now we got some people coming over to talk to you, okay? You have another son inside the house?
I do. Yeah.
Are they sleeping still right now?
One of them is, yeah. The 1-year-old's awake. He's been wearing really loose clothes the last couple of weeks.
He's really skinny.
He's really skinny, and I didn't notice till this morning because he wouldn't, like, I asked him if he's okay, and he would not answer me. Like,
he has autism?
Yeah.
Like a high functioning?
Yeah.
This is where Sean started to realize that Shanna's emotions seemed suspicious, since it was unlikely that she'd been completely unaware of her son's terrible state. And while he listened to her side of the things, he paid close attention to every detail, looking for anything that might help them understand what was really going on.
You said the last time you saw him was 5:30 this morning?
Yeah.
Did he say anything?
He had fallen out of bed.
At 5:30?
Yeah.
You sure it wasn't earlier?
I mean, it's possible. I thought it was 5:30, but I wasn't super awake. I heard a thump, and I came down, and he's kind of laying on his side, kind of like, what the heck?
Timothy was pronounced dead at 6:44 p.m. that evening, just an hour after Shanda explained she'd last spoken with him. Now Sean's suspicions grew even stronger when first responders noted that Timothy's facial muscles had already begun to harden, the kind of physical change that normally takes 2 to 4 hours to appear after death, which contradicts Shauna's claims that he was still alive an hour before the police were called. And considering that this level of malnourishment would never develop overnight, Sean asked her to explain herself.
Asked him to eat last night because his face started looking a little thick. I'm like, okay, enough. And he wouldn't show. I'm like, let me see. Hold your shirt up. And he wouldn't hold his shirt up. He wouldn't do anything.
Did he get real skinny last time too?
Yes. The only reason I know is because my 7-year-old walked in on him accidentally when he was in the shower downstairs. And then my 7-year-old comes up and he's like, Mama, Timothy's really skinny.
Was that this time or last time?
That was last time. Like first week of February is when DC discovered that, and I told him he was either going to start eating multiple times a day, or I was taking him to the hospital, and he didn't want to go to the hospital.
So he ended up eating on his own.
Yes.
So this last time, was it because your husband's wasn't home?
But he hasn't been home since January 3rd. He actually mentioned he was hungry the day.
Shauna explained that Timothy wasn't eating as a response to ongoing problems with the family. Back in January, her husband, Adam Vander Ark, suffered a stroke and had to move out after running into issues accessing their home. She claimed that this incident caused Timothy to stop eating for 3 weeks, until she threatened to take him to the hospital. She also said that for the last 2 weeks, Timothy had stopped eating again, this time because his biological father had divorced his wife and moved to Florida. But while each of these events did in fact happen, investigators would soon learn that none of them had anything to do with Timothy's condition.
I tried to check in the last few days, and he just wouldn't let me anywhere near him. He didn't want a kiss, a hug, nothing. And like I told him, he was stumbling a little bit last night, but he's not the most coordinated kid in the world. And he said he was okay. And then he ate.
What was the last time he ate, you think?
Last night.
The more she talked, the more she contradicted her initial claims that she wasn't aware of the situation, and halfway into her conversation with the officers, it became evident that Timothy hadn't been hiding anything from her. After this initial questioning phase ended, Shawn and the other police officers handed over the case to the detectives, who obtained a search warrant and began to collect evidence throughout the house. And to everyone's shock, they discovered leg shackles tucked in a drawer, or webcams positioned around the basement, zip ties in the bathroom, and a half-empty bottle of Carolina Reaper hot sauce, and locks on the fridge, freezer, and pantry throughout the residence. Even more disturbing, when an autopsy was conducted on Timothy's body the next day, it revealed extremely sunken eyes, slightly blue-tinged skin, and clear signs of severe dehydration, and his cause of death was actually determined to be dehydration, compounded by extreme thinness from starvation and hypothermia. Upon gathering this much information, the detectives realized something extremely horrid had been happening to Timothy, and Shauna was questioned extensively at the scene and afterwards, and the following day she was arrested. 2 days later, Paul was detained at 3:57 p.m. for questioning, as authorities sought to uncover exactly what had happened.
What I do want you to know, though, is that we went through the phones, okay? And we're beginning to go through the phones, and there's a lot of evidence in the phones, and I know that you're kind of aware of communication between yourself and your mother.
Yes.
And those sort of things, and that's kind of what I want to talk to you about. Yeah. But, I mean, certainly those are very serious things that you guys are talking about.
Yeah.
Over the previous 24 hours, police had meticulously combed through text messages, security camera footage, crime scene photographs, and various other pieces of evidence, attempting to construct a full picture of what had occurred. A detective who we refer to as Nick spoke calmly and chose his words carefully, aiming to establish trust and put Paul at ease.
To feel guilty about not telling the truth to me, okay? I want you to just focus on yourself right now. Think about what's best for you, and try to get to the truth of what really happened, brother, because he deserves that. I mean, there's clearly a lot of messages about stuff that you guys are doing with him, about what he's eating, about restricting his food.
And when confronted about how he and Shauna had been actually restricting Timothy's food, Paul dodged the question, attempting to explain his way out to avoid raising suspicion.
We stopped the food restrictions recently because we had noticed his thin. We wanted to get that back on. We didn't want any of this. We never wanted him to be injured or hurt. I loved him so much.
Yeah, I can tell that. I can certainly tell that. When you say we, you talk about your mother.
Yes, she loved him. We wanted what's best. The thing is, he was stuck in the past.
What, so you stopped the food restriction. When did that kind of happen? Like, ballpark that for me?
2 weeks, approximately. We were hoping that we could get enough where he would be safe, and then we could continue to add it back to where we wouldn't have to worry.
What were the restrictions?
We made sure that it was still something that gave him enough calories and everything. It was rice or bread, and like I said last week, he got pizza.
Even as Paul described the timing and types of food, he was trying to justify the restrictions. He insisted Timothy was still getting enough to eat, and that the restrictions were meant to be safe. Yet he never actually explained why they had been necessary in the first place. Even with everything he described, it still didn't explain why Timothy suffered so much before his death. And with the way he spoke about Timothy's deteriorating state, it became painfully clear how delusional Paul and Shauna were concerning the state of Timothy's health. Even worse, they carried on with their lives while witnessing his suffering, treating it as if it weren't a big deal.
He'd been taking a bath, and I went in there to check on him at one point, and he's just kind of laying there. I'm like, bud, you okay? He didn't respond, but he was looking around, and he was breathing, I know that much.
Yeah. So at that time, but he wasn't talking at that time?
No, it started to concern me. I'm not sure if I texted Mama about it or not.
Well, you sent a picture to her.
Yeah, I probably should have said something about the ER at that point, though.
Well, certainly, you have to think about it like this, right? She's grown ill, and if she sees that, that's not all on you, right? You made it. From what I see, you made numerous attempts to say, we need to do something different about this.
Yeah.
We can't keep doing this thing.
I know she she's a good person. I don't know if this is both of our faults. If we should have done something sooner. I know we both could have.
I mean, I think you have to think about this.
Feeling responsible for his role in his younger brother's misery, Paul continued to beat himself up in front of Nick to show that he regretted not trying to save Timothy, and as his guilt intensified during the conversation, Nick, who kept pressuring Paul and taking some blame away from him, was using it as a strategy to draw him out so he would talk more openly about the punishment Timothy had endured.
Not a time about blaming people, but it's a time to try to figure out, when could we have changed things? What could we have done differently? How did we get to the point where we were at? Because, clearly where you guys got to, you say you were in the bath. That wasn't a nice, enjoyable bath though, right? That was a punishment bath, right? That's a cold, ice cold bath.
It's basically sort of...
How many times would you estimate that you guys gave cold baths as a punishment for not behaving or whatever, for whatever reason?
I don't exactly know the number, but it wasn't a lot.
Are we talking like 5, 10, 20, every day, every other day? Like any idea?
5.
Whose idea was it to give him a cold bath as a punishment?
It was my mother's.
Now that he had admitted that Shauna was the one who, along with him, subjected Timothy to this agonizing punishment, it became clear just how much the freezing baths worsened Timothy's suffering while he was already severely underweight. And as more of these details came out, pushing Paul to confess even more.
You remember the first time you guys did it? Like why? What did he do?
Not exactly.
What did he do on that day that he sent the photo that made you have to give him a cold bath?
I think it was that he not only peed, but also pooped in bed, and my mother wasn't too happy because it absolutely reeked.
When we talk about bed, I understand we've been to the house and we get through all the messages. Where did he sleep most of the nights? In that closet?
Yes.
From there, the evidence found in their residence started to make more sense. Timothy slept in a small, cramped closet that he couldn't even stand up, where multiple cameras were placed, as well as an alarm on the door. He was punished if he defecated or urinated in the closet, but he would also be punished if he left the room to use the bathroom. So no matter what he did, he faced consequences, leaving him completely trapped in his own home, controlled by his own family.
Restriction on food, he talked about bread. For how long was he just eating just bread?
A week or 2.
What was he kind of eating before that?
We do ramen, sandwiches, and I think at some points we actually give him like a meal.
Why was it that he couldn't have meals?
The whole sneaking,
because he was sneaking food?
A lot, yeah. We over and over and over. There would literally be times where I would be sitting on the couch playing, and then I'd look up and he's there grabbing something.
And so whose idea was it for him to just eat bread? Is that your idea?
No.
Whose idea was that?
My mother's.
It turned out that not only did Paul and Shauna starve Timothy by having him eat only low-calorie and low-nutrition food for weeks, Paul would also go as far as justifying this despicable act by saying that he did that just because Timothy was allegedly grabbing food, again from his own home. And when asked about the hot sauce that was collected as one of the pieces of evidence, he went on to reveal an even more terrifying thing they did to Timothy.
Tell me about the hot sauce. I know that was used as both the punishment and it was put on the bread. Was it always on the bread?
Not always, no. But the thing is, it still hardly did anything for him. There would be times where it would do something for me because I'd accidentally rub my eye after I put it on there. It was ow.
What dictates whether or not there's hot sauce on the bread that he's eating? What decides that?
I don't know. Whenever my mother told me to put hot sauce on it, I did. It was normally a thin layer to make sure that it wouldn't be too much.
And that's pretty hot?
Very.
So how long have you guys been using the hot sauce for?
Almost a month, maybe.
The punishment of routinely feeding Timothy an extremely hot sauce only proved their depraved desire to torment him. And with the way Paul was using Shauna as a scapegoat and simply saying that he was just following her orders, it became obvious that he was just as guilty as she was. Nick was beginning to see it too, and from this point on, he began to pressure Paul even more, hoping it would finally break him and force him to confront the full weight of what he'd done.
I know that when we talked yesterday in front of your mom, she was lying about some stuff, right? I know that she's a good person. I'm not doubting that at all.
Yeah, we never wanted any of this.
But you also noticed, like I did, some of the things that she was talking to us about, like the truth, right? About, she said she didn't know there was a camera in the bathroom. But the fact of the matter, she asked you to put the camera in the bathroom, right? Didn't she send you a text message that says, make sure that the camera's in there and take the shower curtain down so I can see him? Didn't she ask you that the day before he passed away?
Yeah.
So we talked about some of that stuff. Remember how during the I know this pepper's for, it's for punishment. And what did she say? She said, I didn't know anything about that, right? Why do you think she's saying those things?
She doesn't want to appear like a bad person. She doesn't want to be the bad guy in this. We never wanted any of this. We want him to be healthy. I know that for a fact. We should have been so much. I should have at least put my foot down on something.
Right. But
it's not that I'm afraid of her. I can't fear her because she's not the type to instill fear.
As soon as Nick started to expose Shonda for lying about not knowing any of this, this, Paul became visibly anxious, and rather than confronting reality that they were now being revealed as the ones responsible for Timothy's suffering and death, he doubled down on defending her, praising her and making excuses in a desperate attempt to keep her out of trouble.
So tell me what really happened in the morning then, because obviously what was told to us wasn't the truth. What really happened when somebody found him, or...
I woke up and I had been grabbing my shoes, and it was at that point that it basically all played out like we said. The whole morning thing was exact. He wasn't breathing in the closet. It was the closet though. We had to get him out of the closet, try and resuscitate.
When you guys pull him out of the closet, does he have clothes on at that point, or is he in diaper, or what's that state?
He had a shirt. I think we had put him in pants, or sweatpants, but I don't know, maybe some point in the night he took them off. I don't know about
When you say we, you weren't there when we went to bed, right?
No.
How would you know if we put him in sweatpants? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So do you know if he had pants on or not?
No, honestly. But he didn't have them when we got him out. He had the diaper on, at least.
So you guys pull him out. Does he have pants on or no?
No.
And when we get there, he has pants on?
Yeah, she had me put them on.
She asked you to put pants on? What was that for?
I don't know.
And so you guys, at that time, she decides that she's gonna lie to him and say that he was in the bunk bed? I don't understand.
I don't know.
From this point on, Nick grew even more convinced that Paul and Shauna were actively trying to cover up Timothy's death, because not only was Paul confusing the truths with lies, he was actively helping her construct a false narrative about what happened at the scene.
Come on, you have your belt. You are here. Put it on. I just want to make it look like something that way. I have to go on.
Realizing that any further lies were pointless, Paul finally broke, and Nick began walking him through the horrific reality of what he and his mother had actually done.
It wouldn't take you long to be very much skin and bones if all you got to eat was bread and hot sauce, because how could you eat it? And how could you feel good about it? Was he throwing up stuff that he was eating?
Forcefully. He would force himself to get it back up.
When? Like recently, in the last couple weeks?
Yeah, he would force himself, honestly.
You ever think it's because maybe it was painful? It's hot sauce. It's not like that just goes away. Did you ever complain about pain? Stomach pain? Pain from using the bathroom?
Not that I know of, no. I do know that my mother, she's not perfect, but she's not a bad person.
Do you know, can I ask you this? Do you know of any good people who starved to death? Tell me of one that you know. Tell me of one that you know.
Paul had now fully collapsed in on himself at this point. The person he looked up to, respected, and loved was now being exposed as a monster, destined for life in prison. The most disturbing part, however, was that Paul still hadn't grasped that he might be headed toward the same fate.
And it's very obvious to you, he's got malnutrition, right? It's very obvious to you. But your mom here's not seeing that? She's a law school graduate, and she's very smart. Do you see what I'm looking at here? Yeah. She's a liar. She's lied to you about so much stuff. At some point, you need to stand up for yourself and realize she's the manipulator, she's the liar, she put you in this spot, she did this to your brother, using you. Do you not see that? That she used you to do this to your brother. Your mother used you. She's smarter than all of us, and we're supposed to believe she didn't know what's happening? No, she didn't want him around anymore because he was too much problem.
Even though Nick emphasized repeatedly that covering up Shauna's crimes and portraying them as some sort of love for Timothy wouldn't save her from justice, Paul continued to defend his mother to the very end. Now on July 12, 2022, just 5 days after his interrogation, Paul, who remained out of custody despite being charged days after Shauna's arrest, went live on Facebook to update friends and family on Timothy's past, and viewers tuned in with sympathy and support, completely unaware of the horrifying truth lurking behind the video.
I'll probably post a quick check like this. For those of you who aren't aware, my little brother has passed away, and my mother is currently in the custody of, well, I'm not sure if it's a lot to deal with, but right now we're doing good. We're fine. If I can't actually Facebook you guys live because I don't have my phone and I don't know how to access my stepfathers, I'll post a quick check to let you guys know everything's going on.
Days went by, and as the evidence mounted, Shauna ultimately faced the bulk of the consequences for Timothy's murder, as they both went to trial in December of 2023. In an effort to save himself, Paul testified against his mother, revealing more of the cruel punishments they'd inflicted on Timothy.
Where did he actually sleep most nights?
In the closet.
What did you call the closet? Was there a name you used to refer to the closet?
The small room.
What was in the small room if Timothy was in the small room?
There was a camera monitoring him, even when he slept.
Was there an alarm on the door as well?
Yes, sir.
Some type of motion sensor or alarm?
Motion, vibration, yes.
So we had that on the door and then a camera actually inside the room as well, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And were there times where you were required to watch that camera?
Yes, sir.
And to your knowledge, were there times when your mother was watching that camera as well?
Yes, sir.
Were there any restrictions on his movement inside the closet, or was it he could move around however he wanted inside the closet?
There were restrictions.
What were the restrictions on his movement?
Hands on his head, normally.
Hands on his head, is that what you indicated?
Yes.
Was that some form of discipline for him?
Yes, on his knees and against the corner of a wall.
And when you say hands on head, I'm going to demonstrate just putting my hands just over my head like this. Is that what he was required to do?
Yes.
He was required to be on his knees as well?
Yes, sir.
Timothy, barely able to lift his own arms, was forced to stay in the dark closet with his hands on his head for hours. Now, most people's arms would give out in minutes, but even like this, they watched him closely, making sure he never slipped up.
Did you utilize some type of alarm or alarms on his body to alert you if he was moving?
A vibration detector, yes.
Was there more than one that he was required to wear at times?
At times, yes.
Where were those devices located on his body?
They were normally tied to the back loop of his belt, or the back loop of his pants, I apologize.
And was there something placed on his wrist as well?
Handcuffs, and before that, zip ties, zip cuffs.
When you say zip cuffs, are those put together with zip ties?
Yes.
And those were designed to restrict what?
Movement.
Of what part of his body?
His hands.
And during the proceedings, Paul continued to disclose more details about how they'd starved Timothy and the methods they used to make sure he never got a single meal.
There's some text messages. Do you recall a text message you exchanged with your mother in, I believe it's around April or so, where you've alerted her to the fact that he's eaten some part of a burger?
Yes.
Do you recall that?
Yes.
What was it? What part of the burger is it that he ate?
Just the crust.
And what was your mother's response when you told her that he had eaten the crust of that burger?
Make him throw it up.
Did you try to do that?
I tried at first, yes.
How did you try to do that?
Putting a finger into his mouth as instructed to the back of his throat to induce vomiting.
So who gave you the instruction to put your finger in the back of his throat?
Shonda.
We don't see a text message to that effect. Were you two also communicating by camera as well?
Yes.
The cameras had was it a two-way capability basically? You
Yes.
could talk to the camera or something.
You could talk and they could hear. At certain times it could be activated.
Was there ever any other time where she instructed you to make Timothy throw up?
Yes.
How many times did she instruct you to do that?
3 or 4.
It was evident that Paul was making an extreme effort to insist he'd been instructed to do everything. He tried to shift as much blame as possible, almost to the point of painting himself as a robot, following Shauna's orders. But it ultimately failed against the mountain of evidence stacked against him, and he pleaded guilty the same day. Paul was then evaluated by multiple doctors and experts across different fields, but surprisingly, they found no intellectual issues or mental disorders. He was of sound mind, fully aware and in control of everything he did, and with that established, he was cleared for sentencing. But before delivering his punishment, the judge had the chance to finally speak his mind and tell Paul exactly what he thought of.
Is trying to shift from his mother, from him to his mother. Say that somehow, well, if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have done this. Or she's the one that did this. At the trial, well, at her order, he kept saying it over and over and over again, as to just keep underscoring the point. And if that had been an isolated incident, if that had been one or two of these, that had been punishment that he administered, maybe the court could accept. But we have an individual who's in a household for 6 months, intentionally himself engaging in torture of another person. Ferguson will not get the help he needs in prison. I think he's one step away from becoming a psychopath like his mother, and the court is concerned that he represents a danger to the public, that if released, he would represent a significant danger to the public. But I don't believe you that you're sorry. I don't think you have empathy. I don't think you have any emotion whatsoever. And that's what scares the court. It really scares me.
Shauna was charged with first-degree murder and first-degree child maltreatment, and on January 23rd, 2024, she was sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole, plus 50 years for the child maltreatment charge. Meanwhile, her son, Paul, received a sentence on February 26th that fit the severity of his crimes as well.
Not worse, because you had a job. You could have, Mr. Johnson actually asked you, couldn't you have brought home a thing of food? You could have gone to a neighbor and said, hey, my mom's abusing him. You could have grabbed him and got him out of there. You could have done any number of things to stop this, and you chose not to. Your own brother, and this is where we're at. So based on all that, the sentence of the court, you serve 30 years to 100 years, Michigan Department of Corrections. Credit for 592 days you've already served.